Would you like to... Could you wait for the mic and say who you are and where you're from, please?
Good afternoon, Alan Love, Choice Insight. 24% package. I do wonder whether that includes things like coach tours, extended coach tours, but I think I'm right in saying that the traditional definition of package included 2 out of the 3 of accommodation, travel and activities. Therefore, I wonder if things like theatre breaks and that sort of thing are in there, and those are perhaps pushing those numbers up. I think you mentioned a high proportion were through travel agents, and I wonder if that segment is skewed rather older, and the high street travel agents are still rather strong in that area, I would suggest.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. They're not my figures. Yes, I'm going to take 2 more, and then I must bring in Hayley. Sorry, Hayley.
Andy Woodward, Farmstay. I believe that young people are turning back towards travel agents because they don't have the experience of booking their holidays. So it's all very well us going online and just whizzing off to third city in Poland or whatever. Can I just throw a curveball in? Farmstay B&B vacation length is going up because people don't want to fill their cars up 4 times going to the same place backwards and forwards. So actually our average stay is increasing because people don't want to fill their tank with gas to travel to make multiple journeys.
Could you pass the mic to your colleague just in... Oh, yes, please. And if you could say who you are and where you're from. And then if there's other people, please indicate, but I must bring in Hayley next.
Okay, Robin Barker, Chair of Tourism Society West Country and a variety of other things. It's that time of year that I'm increasingly being asked by the media for a comment on how the season has been and forecasts for the future and so on. And apart from commenting about impacts of weather and storms and media coverage showing that Somerset was underwater and so on, my response at the moment tends to be along the lines, and I'd welcome your comment on this, that there are parallels between tourism and the supermarkets in that at the budget end, a lot of businesses have been doing quite well and have had a generally good summer with plenty of exceptions. At the top end, where there have been businesses really investing in quality, the Waitrose factor, in quality, in service, and of course in skills and digital, many of them have also had a very good year. And then there is the undifferentiated middle, the 3-star hotels and lots of others who have been struggling, getting over the breadline, maybe can't afford to invest and so on. Do you think that's a reasonable generalisation, or do you think I'm getting something badly wrong?
I think that's a pretty spot on. Yeah, I would say it's a spot on generalisation from a city point of view, as where it's at.
Hayley, did you want to respond to that? Or if not, I've got another question for you.
So could you say the end bit again, Robin? So.
About the sort of 3-way split, a bit like the supermarket. So you've got the Waitroses at the top, clear branding, clear message, able to invest in skills and product, generally had a pretty good year. At the lower end, the budget end, selling on price, a lot of holiday parks and so on within that. Of course, I'm not saying bad quality there, but tend to be cheaper. And then a lot in the middle, so 3 stars, 2 stars hotels, maybe haven't invested for long enough, who haven't got responsive websites and so on, who have been struggling.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my particular area, that's certainly what's happened. Because even with the recession, and going back to what Tim was saying, we've actually still seen a lot of investment in hotel accommodation. In several of our market towns, we've had bidding wars from budget hotel companies wanting to invest during that time, and we've seen a few go up, and their occupancy has gone through the roof, and it's pushed actually occupancy rates up of other properties. In terms of high-end, we've also seen investment. We've seen some very big high-end brands and chains come in, and also some really good independent investment. I mean, Peter de Savary took on a property in our area right in the height of the recession, a very old rundown property which has changed hands several times, and he's come in and obviously he's invested millions because that is what he does, but it's actually made a property go from 30% occupancy to near on 90%. So I think the high end and the low end are absolutely being reached, and we're seeing a lot of investment, but I think you're right, we are starting to see the middle ground fall off. And actually what we're seeing replace the middle ground and I don't know if Nick would comment, but we've seen a huge increase in self-catering accommodation pick up some of that area and have those longer breaks.
So this kind of fits with the point I think Robert was making. Forgive me if it wasn't Robert, but this is not about money. It's people are holidaying out of choice, because the UK, you can go away in the UK and spend a lot of money, can't you? And in the Cotswolds.
Oh, well, I mean, again,
Yes.
you can certainly spend a lot of money. And we are, I suppose, known for being an affluent area, and, it's certainly, you're not perceived to be cheap, a cheaper destination to holiday. But actually having your budget hotel chains come in is offering a different level of experience. And what visitors are looking for is that authentic, unique destination experience, which you can get at any price point, as long as you're getting a quality experience while you're there. And I think what consumers won't accept if you come to a beautiful rural destination because of accessibility and all those sorts of things, is they won't accept average. They want to know what they're buying into. They want to know if it's a high-end experience or the price point they've come in at the lower level, and they can spend more on secondary spend and activity while they're there.
But does this also explain the shorter trips people are taking domestically?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a huge increase in, and not even shorter trips, one-night trips have grown considerably, and I think there's many factors there. Anything from your secret escapes vouchers coming in, because a lot of hotels don't like to discount on their own website, but everybody does it through secret escapes. And actually, from talking to the hotels, where they're struggling is actually that's costing them more money to turn over their rooms each night for a one-night stay, because they've got less revenue in for the bed night, and actually they want to increase the longer night stay, but because they've sold them off at such a low price point initially, they're struggling to perhaps get some of that revenue.
You probably all know this already, but if you don't, does it surprise you that the UK holidaymakers are among the very few in Europe who spend more on domestic holidays per night than they do on overseas holidays? In Germany, it's the other way round by a substantial margin, but in Britain, people spend more per night going on holiday in the UK. So it kind of fits with what you've been saying. Can I ask you about the weather? What impact does the weather have? And Sharon, you because the outbound sector clap their hands with glee whenever it pours with rain in the spring for obvious reasons. I will bring you in. So I wonder what impact the weather has, for better or worse. And Sharon, you were talking to me about this earlier.
I think there's two sides of it, aren't there? There's the short-term spontaneous trips that if you're thinking of taking a break the coming weekend and it's forecast to pour down, then it's probably going to stop you taking that trip. I think for the mass of the market, though, people know when they're booking a domestic break that they've not to expect the sun to shine for a week or 4 days or even 2 days, and that actually in most cases, as long as it's mainly fine, people find things to do. And we had a quote in some research we did that said almost the domestic holiday is a completely different beast than the overseas one, because it's a holiday where you go out and you do things and you do a mix of activities, and if the sun's shining throughout, that's great. If it's not the end of the world. If you're away for a week or 2 weeks and it rains every day, it is very, very miserable. And actually that might be one of the drives of short breaks, because as I can't remember who was talking about risk aversion now, that actually a short break is less of a risk because you can always find something to do for those 2 days. And I mentioned our staycation research. In 2012, after it had rained so much, we said, how has the weather this year made you feel about taking domestic holidays in future? And I think 17% said it makes me feel put off, and the other 80-odd% didn't. And the next year, last year, 2013, when we had that very hot summer, we asked the same question, how did the hot weather make you feel? And around 17% said it makes me more likely to take domestic holidays, and the rest didn't. And I think the conclusion from that is that over 80% of the population aren't daft, and they know that what it does one year doesn't predict the next.
Yeah.
And in the main, it's amazing, but there you go. That's why market research is important.
Do you all
so I think
watch?
There's a bit of both.
Yeah. So do you all watch Craig? Do you all watch the weather forecast?
Yeah,
with,
I mean, there are properties that tell me that they can be like empty for the weekend on a Wednesday when it's like raining, and then they can be like a forecast for a great weekend, and then within within a day or so they're fully booked or overbooked and getting loads and loads of calls. So it's kind of like the short notice side of things, the last minute holiday, that will definitely be affected by the weather. The long term one, if somebody says, well, I'm going to go on a walking trip you know, in the hills and do blah blah, and there's no way they can see what the weather's going to be like in anything more than a week here with a temperate climate. So while they're not expecting to have, you know, sunshine every day, it does affect the numbers.
Did you want to? Hayley, yes.
Now, I think the other thing as well, which shapes things and which isn't weather related, we have, for what is a relatively small area, is over an 8-week period, we have 4 massive events that take place. So that'll be the CLA Game Fair at Blenheim, it'll be Big Festival, it'll be the Cornbury Music Festival, it'll be the Wilderness Festival. And those events alone bring in 160,000 people into the destination, and they buy their tickets in advance, and they're going to come regardless of what the weather is. I mean, there's also an argument when somebody comes in for an event like that, how much of the area do they get out and explore and spend in the local economy? But what we have seen is from some of the research that we've done with the events companies is they come back and return to the area for a secondary visit because they like it but didn't get out to enjoy it as part of the festival. But you're still going to get that volume of numbers in because they've bought those tickets, and that's not weather dependent. It's whether you bring your wellies or not.
Does anybody else want to come in? Yeah, Nick. Yeah, Nick first, and then Robert. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, it would be wrong of me to say that the weather doesn't have an impact. It does, and 2012 was quite a challenging year. It's fair to say, I guess, that certain types of accommodation are more weatherproof than others, or you know, the people go for an experience, and has been said already, people don't go expecting it to be sunshine. I think it ties into the quality argument as well, and I think if the accommodation is of a high standard and it's, you know, in our case of self-catering accommodation and cottages, it's got a nice wood-burning stove and an Aga and a 42-inch flat screen TV, then that helps people think, well, actually, you know, we're going to be fine. We can run to the pub and, you know, it's okay. So I think quality is very important for that reason as well. But again, you know, the UK isn't the only holiday destination where it might rain. People love going to Copenhagen. That's very in vogue at the moment. People go to Ireland. You know, it's. I think it's slightly patronising to the UK holidaymakers. I think they only go to places for sunshine. It's there's other things to do as well. It's a whole experience.
Robert, you wanted to come in.
Yes, I mean, tent camping in the UK has not yet recovered from the weather in 2012. And tent camping, caravans, motorhomes, all the same, far more last-minute bookings based on the weather. I know that if the weatherman on Thursday morning says, and by the way, it's looking good for the weekend, that we'll struggle to answer the phones on Thursday morning. But it's not just the actual weather, and this is something that really gets me. It's people's perceptions of the weather as told to them by the media. And, you know, I will name names. The Daily Express and the Daily Mail can quite literally wipe out tourism in an area. If they say 2 weeks in advance it's going to be a washout in the West Country at Easter, well, that's it. You know, doesn't matter what the weather does then. Doesn't matter what anybody says after that. You know, they have killed it. And I think that, you know, as an industry, we should all press for more accurate, sensible reporting of the weather. It rains in the UK. A few showers is not going to be a monumental, catastrophic disaster.
Robert, I think you're on a hiding to nothing there, but what it tells me is that it'd be a fantastic time to go if the Express and the Mail have said that, because you know there's going to be no Express or Mail readers there. Do you wanted to... Can we have the microphone to this chap here, please? Yeah, well, this guy's been waiting a little bit longer, if you don't mind, and then I'll come to you, sir. If you could say who you are and where you're from.
Hi, I'm John Young from BDRC Continental. Just a couple of quick points. We conducted some research in January which sort of showed the staycation literally falling off a cliff, and we did the survey as the bad weather sort of took hold, and we got loads and loads of PR for that, and the weather was certainly blamed for it. But I think it's vindicating to see that it's actually driven by shorter holiday breaks as opposed to people not holidaying in the UK. I just had a very quick question, mostly for Sharon, but for the whole panel as well, about seaside holidays in the UK. I've noticed that has kind of declined, flatlined at best. whilst city breaks are on the increase, and I think you said rural breaks are as well. Really, basically, why do you think that is? Does everybody else have that feeling? And what sort of solutions do you think there are to sort of turn that around?
I think.
Sorry to interrupt you, but the latest GB Tourism survey figures show seaside trips up 3% in the 6 months to June, but holiday trips overall down 2%.
Yeah, I think, 3% halfway through the year is probably still flatlining. So the line was down 6% versus 2006 in 2013. So it's up 3% this year. It's flat with that staycation blip in 2009. I think there's probably two things that have gone on. I think one is about, as we've said, people changing their holiday habits, different breaks coming into the market, typically the short breaks, which have tended not necessarily to be in the seaside destinations. And I do wonder as well whether it was the other point I made about the least affluent people dropping out of the market altogether, and some of them being the traditional audiences for the more traditional seaside destinations, and simply not being able to take holidays at all. So we picked up, I think, 1.5 million holidays that DEs were taking in 2006 didn't happen last year, and at risk of pulling in stereotypes or anything else, I suspect some of those would have been the traditional seaside holidays. So I think there's a bit of both. And I think people, part of the, I'm still going to carry on calling it the staycation trend because I can't think of a better name, but I think part of what we picked up is people being more interested in discovering different bits of the country and perhaps actually wanting to try new and different things, and that's why other destinations have benefited. So I think probably a mix of factors. I'd be interested what other people think.
I think picking up on particularly Robin's comments, I think probably some seaside resorts have been slower to adapt their accommodation to that market, and so they're probably in that 2-star, 3-star bracket that has suffered the most because they haven't adapted enough of the product to be luxury. And the bottom end of the market, the budget end, a travel lodge or another type of, has got a brand behind it, and it's fulfilled that gap. So it's possibly around that. I don't think it's the weather or anything else like that, but I think it's that quality of product. And I think also cities or more rural or other areas have put on a lot more entertainment and events and festivals, which was traditionally what happened at the seaside. The theatre came out of the cities and went to the coastal areas, etc. But the cities have brought that back in now to retain their market. So actually, you don't need to sort of go to the seaside to have that 6 weeks. The traditional theatre going dark for the whole of the summer doesn't happen in the city anymore. So I think the resorts have suffered a little bit on that as well.
I want to come back to the quality of accommodation and so on in a minute, but first of all I want to bring in this chap here, if I may. If you can pass the mic to him and say who you are.
Thank you.
Please.
It's John Gallery, Great Potential Business Tourism Consultancy. I'm chairman of the Yorkshire branch of the Society as well. My question's about, 2 points really. One, I think the bookability. 20 years ago we were talking about bookability. I think that's disappeared now. Everybody knows how to book. We're all savvy enough, whether we're 20 or whether we're 60. I think booking is easy for British holidays. My more important question, perhaps, is what does the panel think about the effect on domestic tourism travel when there are overseas events taking place? In other words, security issues, travel issues, and that sort of thing. Is that a driver for this increase?
Overseas issues. What do you mean? Do you mean events, or do you mean, or people are so sort of terror attacks or whatever? Yeah, security stuff.
I think the answer is yes.
Yes, definitely had an impact.
Terminal 5 baggage problems,
Yeah.
French air traffic controllers, Spanish baggage handlers, and Icelandic volcanoes do a huge amount for UK tourism,
And,
domestic. And I think we should sponsor the Icelandic volcanoes.
I think people have looked at other overseas markets and started to go a bit more long haul because certain parts of Europe they felt aren't where they want to go. So Turkey, around the Med, they might not feel as safe as they did in the past. Certain parts of North Africa going that way. And so they're looking somewhere different. You see a lot more North America, Canada coming into the marketplace, a lot more adverts and more aggressive in the marketplace at the moment as competition. You know, when you're looking at who you're competing against for customers, I think that's been a big factor.
And what about the exchange rate? Because one of the things that happened after the crisis in 2008 was the pound lost about 25% of its value, didn't it? So suddenly going to Europe wasn't cheap when you got there either. How big a factor has that been?
Yeah, we certainly saw that, as I mentioned before, we certainly saw that trend in 2009. And I'd agree with everything that's already been said. I think, you know, disruption at airports, hassle, travel that becomes a hassle, and other, you know, whether it's political or whatever events, certainly, yeah, it all helps. I don't think there's any one thing that's driving any of the trends that we've seen. You know, it's often a lot of 1%ers, and you know, the weather's in there, overseas travel, air travel, and so on. Everything is building up. That's why it's difficult to, you know, there's no golden bullet that you can just pick on one thing and say, well, if that goes that way, holidays in the UK are going to fly, although not fly in the. Yeah,
Hayley,
I'm trying to think of something that's not a pun.
I was just going to say, the other thing, going back to what Sharon was saying earlier about families travelling together in generations, it's a lot easier to travel together domestically than it is to go to the airport and have that experience for several generations. And again, particularly the self-catering holiday market or hiring out your big country manor house. I mean, we are in a situation now where demand exceeds supply in our area for that type of accommodation, because families are coming away, and not just for a couple of nights, for a week's stay to spend together and go off and do their own thing. I think that's definitely had an impact.
you wanted to ask a question. Can we have the mic here? Thank you.
Thank you. I'd bear out everything that you've just said. I'm Sandra Matthews-Marsh, Chairman of the Tourism Society and also Chief Executive of Visit Kent. That's my day job. But we found, I think if Bernard Donoghue were here, he would really also talk about times of uncertainty, make people think about home, family, what's familiar. And I certainly find that we, in our research that we've done, even with the, Scotland, the Scotland question, it has created a feeling of uncertainty. And, you can only see the rise of, the Great British Bake Off and vintage and all those things that people hanker after, and they think more about home and family and roots and local at times of global uncertainty as well. And I think the other interesting thing that we've seen is that the family group issue is massive in Kent. The VFR market is huge, and more it's intergenerational families travelling together, staying in big cottages and hiring a house and wanting to spend sort of family time together. So we've got a piece of work going on in Margate at the moment. Wayne Hemingway, the designer, has come into the area and is helping us put Dreamland back on the map. Any of you can remember Dreamland? But that's a vintage vibe. It's all about looking back to the heyday of the best bits of the seaside, but repackaging them in a really, as he calls it, hipster vibe. It's about young guys and girls looking for something a little bit different, but that kind of reaches back in the past rather than is exotic and Asia and Far East and travel. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity for us in the domestic scene to really kind of work that vein, if we can, with our products.
You've got a real piece of work standing for election in the area as well, though, haven't you, in Nigel
Thank you
Farage,
for that.
which
Yeah,
really
looking
has
forward
a
to
counter.
Mr. Farage coming
Can you
on
pass
patch. Not.
Can you pass the microphone to this chap here, please?
Mic to
And
mic.
last call for questions, really, because then I've got a couple more to ask and then we'll have to wrap up. Yes, please.
Mike Bugsgang and Associates and Tourism Society board member. Heard a lot from the panel about the current and the past, but what are their views about staycation? What's next? What are the trends and what are the products that they see coming through 2015, 16 and beyond?
Who wants to pick that up first?
Well, I will. Pleasure. Yeah. I think something. I think it was Robert said earlier that one thing is for sure, that you can't take anything that's happened in the past and predict what's going to happen in the future. So I think all of the economic factors and political factors and so on don't give us a real view of what's going to happen going forward. I think the key is it does come back to the quality question for me, and there might be these triggers of overseas events or bad weather that trigger people to rediscover the UK, but one thing's for sure, that if they don't have a good time, they're not going to try that experience again when they don't have to. So I mean, the UK tourism product, I think, has changed beyond all recognition in the last 10 years. And the experience that people have, it's become trendy again. There's Whitstable and Southwold and Salcombe, and you know, all of these seaside resorts that have reinvented themselves as fantastic places to have a great holiday experience. And the fact, as I said earlier, coming back to where we started, the fact it's in Britain for me is almost irrelevant. It's a great experience. And I think, you know, just looping it back again to another discussion that was had earlier, the quality of accommodation has got to keep up, and it's got to be absolutely top notch and what people expect. And I wouldn't say that means everything's got to be 5-star and everything's got to be luxury to drive growth. There is room for good quality 3-star accommodation, and I think what we have certainly found is that people take their peers' views on that as being a good indicator of where to go. I mean, customer reviews, which I think is changing the market and driving quality up like we haven't seen before. Because, you know, if we've got a cottage and it's got 20 reviews and 19 of them are 9.5 out of 10, that's going to book. And that is driving quality, and that's going to drive forward momentum, I think.
Yeah, I think. I was going to say. I think also Britain's had 3 or 4 really good years. We've had some great events in the country, and I think that's put a focus on us from overseas visitors, and we're certainly seeing and predicting a continued growth in international tourists coming in to the country. A lot more short breakers, using regional airports. You know, last 3 months we've gone through the million visitor market at Birmingham Airport, and we've not had that growth before. So seeing a lot more international, and I think that, well, our research would say that's on the back of a consistent message out there about the quality, and that Britain is now punching its way as a holiday destination.
Did you want to say something, Hayley? Does everybody feel that it's punching its weight, that there's a critical mass been achieved of good quality accommodation? Nobody.
I think it's shifted as well. So where we are, we're seeing your traditional B&B, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Miggins helping you out decline, and what that's been replaced with is quite good quality restaurants and inns with rooms, and having more of your boutique style rooms in your restaurants and inns. There's been a real shift there, and a decline in your traditional B&B and converting to your restaurants with rooms, and there's been huge growth in that area for us.
Okay. Oh, yes, go on. Just wait for the mic, though, because otherwise it won't be picked up.
Hello, Melanie Galvin from Mulberry Cottages. We were established in 2006, and we have grown and grown. And what has helped us, the recession has helped us, because it's enabled us to gather more owners who need to let their properties for an income, or their second properties, whereas they could just use it for 2 weeks of the year and lock it up. They're not getting the big bonuses they used to get in the city, so they need another income. Or we have farmers that are turning their farmland into holiday accommodation. So it's enabled us to let very high quality holiday accommodation. So that's where the recession has helped us.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm aware of the time and the need to have a drink. So I'm going to wind up. What I'd like to do is to give everybody on the panel the opportunity to come back and make one point, the point more than any other they want to leave people with before they finish. And I'll take you in order, starting with Nick. But just before I come to you, Nick, so you've got a chance to think, I want to ask you, Hayley, one final thing, which is what have you been telling David Cameron about the staycation, or what have you been telling David Cameron, basically?
Well, we obviously keep him very informed, and to be very clear, this is my opinion and nothing political or that of my organisation whatsoever. But he's always been a big ambassador of tourism. He's supported everything from a B&B opening, farm diversification, to attending English Tourism Week launch events. So for us, we've also had our own budget cuts like every other area. And we've had to prove that tourism is valuable to the local economy. And the way that we've got that through to him is it's the biggest economic driver into our district. And just that alone, when you're talking about the visitor economy, the value it brings in, the visitors, the profiles of sustainability, it's that messaging I think that's really has got through and has really made him an ambassador for tourism and our destination for a long time now, well before he particularly was elected into power.
Does it make him purr?
I couldn't possibly comment.
Okay, just as the final remarks then for people, one at a time, I want you to stress what you think is the most important thing, past, present, future, and just explain why it's important. Nick?
I'm going to come right back to what I said at the beginning. I think as a travel and tourism industry, we need to stop differentiating holidays in the UK or the staycation from holidays abroad. We've got to think of it as an integral part of the travel and tourism industry. I think it's very telling in your opening remarks, Ian, that you said Travel Weekly really doesn't do much with domestic holidays, or that's something we're certainly trying to change and are talking to you more. I think that's important to get it out there. I think ABTRA is another very good example, and we've been extremely annoyed at times when ABTRA have gone as far as to put press releases out which are really promoting overseas travel to the detriment of staying in the UK when there's been bad weather and so on. So I just so passionately feel that we have to bring it in from the cold and love it and embrace it as an industry, because there's a lot of money to be made, quality's improved, and as we've seen, there are some very, very positive upward trends.
Can I just point out that we established in the course of this that it's not the media responsible for any fall in staycations, it's BDRC, as our friend established. Craig,
I mean, for me, I think it's been touched on a number of times, and that is the holiday in the UK will continue to be a popular thing as long as the quality is good and the feedback and that customers enjoy the stay, that it's something that's exciting and that they want to do. And this is where I think the online side is certainly, there's nowhere to hide with bad reviews now. TripAdvisor, all the kind of review systems are feeding back information, and that's driving an increase in quality. But also, I think people are understanding that the things that they can offer, and I think the UK has kind of over these last few years woken up to all the special things that there are there, and there's that excitement, and that's what people book. They don't book a list of facilities and a place. They want the thrill of something to happen. And that, I think, is certainly what the UK can offer and has always offered, but suddenly we've kind of realised it, and that will grow.
Hayley?
And I've got a concern, I suppose, moving forward in terms of the staycation factor, in terms of that people don't have bottomless pits of disposable income. And there is a concern that what's happening, particularly from a destination point of view, is one destination is competing against another. And what I would like to see long term is, for example, the Cotswolds isn't competing with the Lake District. Which one do you go to? We need to change that thinking and make that experience worthwhile, so actually you go and see both destinations. You're not picking one against another. And I think there's quite a challenge there amongst destinations to try and achieve that. Blue sky thinking, I know, but I think it'd be nice to make that go moving forward.
Robert?
Yes, looking forward, principally. Our experience in overseas travel to near Europe, which we do quite a lot of, is that currency doesn't affect it. In fact, the pound was strong at the start of this year and our overseas bookings were down, but our UK bookings were strong. So the strength of the pound isn't what's driving people. I still believe that it's a question of choice, not cost. And people are choosing to holiday in the UK. And I think going forward, to keep that moving forward, I'd recommend everyone to do as we have done over the last 5 years during the recession, and that is to invest. Invest in the product, invest in the people. Holidays and holidaying and breaks are all about experience. We sell experiences, that's what we do. And if we invest to give people good experiences, they'll stay with us and keep coming back.
You've made Tim happy with that. I
Yeah,
think, Tim.
because that was the point I was going to make. We've got to... No, it's all right. And I think we've just got to get the end-to-end experience totally right. And I think we've got parts of it right, and we've made massive improvements on it. But I think for 2015, the goal is to get somebody arriving saying fantastic and going saying it was fantastic. And all goods in the middle as well, because I don't think that happens totally now to anybody's experience.
So what does that take then?
I think it takes us working together to ensure that, but it takes us working with people that may have been seen in different disciplines, areas. The public transport's got to work, the welcome at the airport, we've got to get the baggage handlers. You know, if you're looking at, you know, inbound person coming in, you've got to look at that total destination marketing or management.
Okay, Sharon.
Final point. Again, where I ended the presentation really, which is that there are opportunities for the domestic market, that some people may have come into the staycation unwillingly but have really enjoyed it, and it's been a fantastic showcase for the country. I think one of the challenges is actually getting new ideas and experiences out to people, making sure they know what to do. They love discovering new accommodation, they love discovering great places to go and eat and great experiences. It might, for people in this room, be easy to book a domestic holiday, but actually if you don't know the country that well, you don't know what's where, it's not always easy to find that and put that together. So I think we need to keep almost seeding that enthusiasm to make sure that we get the information out there to help people make those choices and not be overwhelmed by the thousands and thousands of reviews that they might find.
Okay, please give a big thank you to Nick, Craig, Hayley, Robert, Tim and Sharon.